Let me read out some text of that judgment and see, so you can explain some of them.
Yes.
The Rivers State government had gone to court seeking interpretation of Section 271(3)-5 on this same matter. But in that suit, the presiding judge, Justice Lambo Akombi, said that the argument by the NJC that Okocha was the oldest judge of the Rivers State High Court and more qualified to be chief judge of the state because the chairman of the state customary court of appeal, Justice Peter Agumagu, was of a different arm of the judiciary, was wrong. He also said that the state governor could not be compelled to accept whoever the NJC sends to him because the governor is not a rubber stamp.
Yes.
According to him, the letter of the NJC of July 2, 2013 and received on July 30 by the governor that only the most senior judge must be appointed contrary to the recommendation of the Judicial Service Commission is wrongful, null, and void.
Yes.
He also says the letter recommending Justice Daisy Okocha in preference to Agumagu, saying that Agumagu is the most senior. No, it's not the most senior. The most senior judge in the High Court is wrong, null, and void. He also says that the criteria used by the NJC to disqualify Justice Agumagu is wrong, null, and void. And then
it goes on and on. You see, let's take everything one after the other and in perspective. First and foremost, under Section 158 of the 1999 Constitution, and I have my Constitution here, if you wish I read.
Go ahead.
Any action of some bodies, including the National Judicial Council, is not subject to the control or direction of any other authority or person.
Any action of?
Let me read. Section 158, subsection 1.
Yeah.
In exercising its power to make appointments or to exercise disciplinary control over persons, the Code of Conduct Bureau, the National Judicial Council, which is the NJC, the Federal Civil Service Commission, the Federal Judicial Service Commission, the Revenue Mobilization and Fiscal Commission, the Federal Character Commission, and the Independent National Electoral Commission shall not be subject to the direction or control of any other authority or person in exercising its power to make appointments or to exercise disciplinary control over persons.
Does this include the judiciary?
Of course, National Judicial Council.
But this
in the disciplinary... Well, I want to avert our minds to the suspension given to Agumagu. In other words, what I'm trying to say is that there may be a standing instruction in a line to the judicial officers in Rivers State that you ought not to take up this appointment. In other words, and if you go outside of that instruction, NJC has a power to act in disciplinary manner. And if it does so act, nobody, no authority can direct it or control it in that respect.
I thought you cited the Supreme Court judgment on this kind of matter.
Yes, I said in the Supreme Court judgment, it was said that the governor cannot appoint a chief judge without recourse to the NJC.
So if we can take, well, how then do we interpret the position of the Supreme Court? Is that not, wasn't that because they subjected this kind of matter to them?
No, I am not saying that it is not to be subjected. I'm not using this to say the authority of the court is ousted. No. I am saying that the power of NJC is sacrosanct. It should be respected.
Yeah, but can the NJC force their recommendation, or must the governor
the NJC
accept
the NJC
can
force its power to recommend.
But
you cannot force its recommendation.
Yeah, so it means
but it's not forcing its recommendation from what is available in the open space.
Okay, so it means that the governor can say, well,
I'm not acceptable with Okocha. Go get me a new person. And it will behove on NJC to go get a new person. But as it is, the NJC has not been given the opportunity to go get another person. And the only other option, Agumagu, has been put under suspension, and the NJC has power to suspend Agumagu. That is the power that the NJC has, and it's inviolable that we should not impugn.
Why has
we'll
the
come
NJC...
back to the suspension. I wanted us, sorry Mark, we'll come back to the suspension, but I actually wanted us to look at what the Attorney General of Rivers State has been saying. Yes. In quote here, he says, it is important to state from the outset that the NJC has always preferred the doctrine of the most senior judge of the High Court in the appointment of the Chief Judge of the state, and in particular, Justice D.W. Okocha as its candidate for the position. So in a single-minded pursuit of the actualization of this doctrine and preference, it enunciated further the doctrine that only a judge of the State High Court is qualified for consideration for the office, and that Justice Agumagu, then President of the State Customary Court of Appeal, could not be allowed to cross over to become the State Chief Judge.
Yes.
That's a comment from the Attorney General.
Yes.
He's saying that was what NJC did.
Yes.
But in any case, we have come to realize that, for instance, Ikeji can be a judge.
Yes.
You can be a judge,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So it mustn't be that you must be from the High Court or the Customary Court.
No.
It can be a chief judge.
Yeah.
If you are to be a chief judge, if you are to be a chief judge,
yes,
the NJC has its own criteria, and that's the power of the NJC to develop its own criteria for the recommendation of a chief judge or even a judge should not be taken away from the NJC. And so if the NJC intends to act according to seniority, you must give it to them. You allow them to have it.
Oh, but the
And again, constitutionally
but the
speaking.
Constitution is very clear.
Yes. Okay, let me go to the Constitution.
Yeah.
Section 271, I think subsection 2, talks about appointment of an acting chief judge. In that subsection, it said that it is the next most senior judge that can be acting chief judge. And by simple logic, customary court is not high court. So the president of the customary court is not a member of the high court. That is simple logic. Now, if the most senior judge in the high court is Mr. A, that Mr. A ought to have been appointed as the acting chief judge. Now, a judge who is under the control of NJC, knowing that this is the position of NJC, still goes ahead to subvert that position of NJC, who by nature of the structure of Nigeria, since we have the NJC has a first-line charge on the revenue of Nigeria, since the judge is under the authority and disciplinary control of NJC, he ought to respect the views of the NJC. But somebody like Agumagu went ahead and accepted the position of acting chief judge. I think that is a spite. That's spitting on the face of the NJC. Coming from that perspective,
that led to the suspension.
Yes, that is. I'm sure that
making himself available for that appointment.
I'm sure that is part of the process that must have led to the suspension, because that was spiteful of the NJC.
You didn't think that the NJC also brought this on itself in terms of how it is acted? Because if you have this judgment from a court of law that is very clear in terms of how many wrongful mistakes they've made in terms of appointment and the reason that they have given, you don't think that the NJC brought it on itself?
I don't think so. I don't think so.
Because we have referred to the Constitution now in terms of the powers that the NJC has. And then when we want to do certain things, we say, oh, the NJC has autonomy to do this, has autonomy to do that.
Yes.
But the Constitution seems to be very clear in terms of what it can do and what it shouldn't do, what the criteria to be a chief judge is. Yet we do not seem to be deferring enough to it.
The NJC is deferring enough to it. What are you saying the NJC is not deferring enough to it? As far as I'm concerned, and I'm not speaking on behalf of the NJC. I wish I could speak on their behalf, but as far as I'm concerned, the NJC is acting according to the letter and spirit of the Constitution. It is acting according to the power it has to recommend. And it need not, excuse me, if the fact that you're a judge and you're 10 years in practice and you become a judge, the NJC decides to make you the chief judge, recommend you for the chief judge, so be it. But if the NJC says, no, you can't be, that this is the person that we want to recommend, so be it. We must respect that, no matter how you want to interpret it.
You have said that the NJC was not given the opportunity to make another recommendation.
I think so. From the open, yes.
Would you say that the NJC is not aware of this particular court judgment and should have taken the steps it ought to have taken?
What do you mean it's not? It should have taken the steps it ought to have taken. I think that the NJC has appealed from the information available in the open space.
In other words, it is aware of this particular judgment then?
Yes, but I am sure that it is waiting, because I have not seen it. The NJC has not come out to say that, yes, River State Governor has come back to us and written us a formal letter that he is rejecting our recommendation. That is where someone like me, I will hold NJC to its responsibility that if the governor has come to you and said it is rejecting this recommendation, it behoves on you to go back and bring a second name. Even if it is not Agumagu, you can bring somebody else's name, but you must act upon that letter from the governor. So I think that it is the responsibility of the governor to make it clear to us that he has sent a letter to NJC asking it to recommend another person. But Agu Magu should be ruled out entirely.